The Galactic Council chamber hummed with the quiet energy of 1,000 civilizations gathered in one place. Representatives from across known space sat in their designated pods, their forms ranging from gaseous clouds to crystalline structures to beings that looked almost like Earth's ancient trees. At the center podium, Council Speaker Muradin raised 3 of her 4 arms for silence. The amphibious leader's skin flickered through colors that signaled grave concern. "We gather today to address the Jathic Empire's formal petition," she announced. Her voice translated instantly into every language present. "They request the Council lift the Sol system quarantine, a prohibition that has stood for 847 standard years." Grand Admiral Velshara of the Jathic Empire stepped forward. Her species stood tall and elegant, with pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer in the chamber's light. Like most Jathic, she carried herself with absolute confidence, some would say arrogance. "Honored Council," Velshara began, a voice smooth and dismissive. "My empire has reviewed the ancient quarantine order. We find it based on outdated fears and primitive assessments. The humans of Earth were barely capable of splitting atoms when this prohibition began. Surely after 8 centuries, we can acknowledge they pose no threat to galactic civilization." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Some delegates nodded in agreement while others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. "The Empire proposes a simple solution," Velshara continued. "We will enter Sol System, assess the current human civilization, and integrate them into galactic society under Empire guidance, of course. The system's resources are too valuable to leave untouched because of ancient paranoia." Council Speaker Muradin's skin flashed red, a warning color among her people. "Admiral, you clearly have not read the full quarantine documentation. The prohibition was never about human technology. It was about human nature." "Human nature?" Velshara laughed, a sound like crystal bells. "They are mammals from a slightly higher gravity world. Yes, their planet is classified as a death world, but so are 14 other quarantine systems. What makes these particular mammals so special that they merit the longest-standing prohibition in Council history?" An elderly delegate from the Korth Unity spoke up, his voice creaking with age. "I was young when the quarantine was established. I remember the debates. The survey team that found Earth spent 2 full cycles studying the humans before making their report. And what did they find?" Velshara challenged. "Stone tools? Tribal warfare? Primitive superstitions?" "They found survivors," the old Korth replied quietly. "They found a species that had endured 5 mass extinction events on their world. They found creatures that learned to make fire, hunt in packs, and turn predators into companions. They found beings that looked at scarcity and invented agriculture, looked at disease and invented medicine, looked at their own fragility and invented tools that made them stronger." Velshara waved her hand dismissively. "All species do these things. This is simply evolution. Not like humans," Muradin interjected. "The survey team's final report, which I have here, contains one particular observation that sealed the quarantine decision. When the survey ship revealed itself to a group of humans and showed them images of the wider galaxy, do you know what the humans' first question was?" "Probably something about trade or technology," Velshara suggested. "No," Muradin said, her skin now a deep purple of sadness. "The first question every single human asked was, how do we defend ourselves from you?" Silence fell across the chamber. "They didn't ask to join us," Muradin continued. "They didn't ask for help or gifts or knowledge. Their first instinct upon learning they were not alone in the universe was to prepare for conflict. Not out of aggression, but out of a survival instinct so deeply ingrained that it defined their immediate response. That proves my point," Velshara argued. "They are paranoid and primitive. Such a species needs guidance from more enlightened civilizations, preferably the Jathic Empire. You misunderstand the quarantine's purpose. An ancient council archivist spoke from the back. Her species rarely participated in debates, preferring to maintain records rather than make policy. The quarantine was established to protect humanity from exploitation while they developed, yes. But it was also to give the galaxy time to prepare for humanity's eventual emergence. Prepare for what? Velshara demanded. A species of nervous mammals? Prepare for what happens when those nervous mammals spend 847 years knowing they are not alone. The archivist responded, knowing they are being watched, knowing that someday someone might come for them. Do you understand what humans do when they feel threatened, Admiral? They unify. They innovate. They prepare. Velshara's confidence never wavered. The Jathic Empire has conquered 47 star systems in the past decade. Our fleet numbers in the thousands. Our weapons can crack planets. Our shields deflect any known energy weapon. Whether the humans spend centuries preparing or not is irrelevant. They are confined to one system with no faster-than-light capability according to your own monitoring reports. Our monitoring ended 300 years ago, Meraden admitted. The Council decided that constant surveillance was itself a form of interference. We have only passive sensor data since then. Then you don't even know their current status. Velshara exclaimed triumphantly. You're protecting or fearing a species based on information from 3 centuries past. This is absurd. The chamber erupted in debate. Some delegates agreed with the Empire's position, while others defended the quarantine. Voices in 100 languages rose and fell like waves finally. Meraden called for order. The Council will vote on the Empire's petition. All in favor of lifting the Sol System quarantine? The vote was closer than Meraden had hoped. The quarantine remained in place, but Baralai Velshara stood tall despite the defeat. Very well. The Jathic Empire respects the Council's decision, she said, though her tone suggested otherwise. We will not violate the prohibition. She turned and left the chamber. Her stride purposeful and confident. What the Council didn't know, what they wouldn't discover until it was too late, was that Velshara had already dispatched her fleet before attending the meeting. The petition had been a formality, a diplomatic gesture to maintain appearances. In her mind, the Council was filled with cowards clinging to ancient. Fierce 300 warships were already entering the outer reaches of Sol System, the Admiral believed. She was claiming easy territory and primitive resources. She had no idea she was leading her people into their greatest disaster. Back in the Council chamber, the ancient Korth delegate turned to Meraden. The Empire's fleet has already launched, hasn't it? Meraden's skin cycled through colors of despair. Our sensors detected them 2 days ago. They'll reach Sol System's outer boundary within hours. Then, we are about to witness either the vindication of our fears or the revelation that we were foolish all along. The Korth said softly. I hope we were foolish, Meraden whispered. Because if we were right about humanity, if they spent 847 years preparing for this exact moment, then the Jathic Empire is about to learn why Earth space is prohibited. Across the chamber, emergency communication systems began flashing. The automated warnings from the Sol System boundary had been triggered. The galaxy was about to discover what happens when someone threatens a species that spent centuries expecting exactly that threat. The Jathic fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of Sol System, near the orbit of Neptune. 300 warships materialized in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with shield energy and weapon ports already charged. Grand Admiral Velshara stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Eternal Victory, studying the tactical displays with satisfaction. The system appeared empty. No defensive platforms, no patrol ships, nothing but planets and asteroids following their ancient orbits. Around a yellow star, begin scanning for human settlements. She ordered. I want population centers identified and ready for targeting. One demonstration of our power should be enough to make them surrender. Her tactical officer, a younger Jothic named Rendell, worked his console with practiced efficiency. Admiral. Scanners are detecting. He paused, his skin flickering with confusion. What is it? Valshar demanded. We're being scanned, Admiral. Multiple sources, very sophisticated. The energy signatures are unlike anything in our databases. The humans are using active sensors on us? Valshar laughed. How bold of them. Can you locate the source? No. Admiral, the signals are coming from everywhere and nowhere. It's as if the entire system is watching us. Valshara's amusement faded slightly. Deploy scout drones. I want visual confirmation of human capabilities. They've had centuries to develop. So perhaps they've learned to hide better than expected. The fleet launched hundreds of small reconnaissance drones that spread throughout the outer system. For several minutes, all seemed normal. The drones reported asteroids, comets, and the expected planetary bodies. Then the first drones simply vanished from their sensors. What happened to Scout 7? Rendell asked, checking his instruments. It just stopped transmitting? Malfunction? Valshara suggested. No, Admiral, Scout 12 just disappeared too, and Scout 23. Admiral, we're losing drones across the entire formation. Before Valshara could respond, a communications officer's skin went pale. Admiral, incoming transmission. It's in our language. A voice filled the bridge, calm, measured, and distinctly human. Jothic vessels, you have entered restricted space in violation of Galactic Council protocols. This is your only warning. Leave immediately or face defensive measures. Valshara straightened, her confidence returning. So the humans can speak our language and destroy a few drones. Impressive for primitives, but hardly threatening. Open a channel. The communications officer nodded nervously. Human vessels. This is Grand Admiral Valshara of the Jothic Empire. Your system is hereby claimed under Imperial authority. Surrender immediately, and your people will be treated fairly. Resist and face annihilation. You have one of your hours to comply. The response came instantly. Admiral, we've been watching you since you left your homeworld. We know your fleet composition, your weapons capabilities, and your tactical doctrines. We've had 847 years to prepare for this day. You have 30 seconds to begin. Retreat before we demonstrate why Earth space is prohibited. Valshara's skin flushed with anger. You dare threaten the Empire? Tactical. Power all weapons. Target their transmission source and fire. Admiral, we can't pinpoint the source, Rendell protested. The signal is bouncing through the entire system. Then fire on the closest planetary body, Neptune. Let's show them what defiance costs. The fleet's forward ships charged their primary plasma cannons. Energy builds that could slag continents in seconds. They fired in unison. Brilliant beams of superheated matter crossing the void toward the ice giant. The beams never reached their targets. Something intercepted them. Thousands of somethings. Small objects moving impossibly fast created a screen of interference that dissipated. The plasma blasts harmlessly. What just happened? Valshara shouted, unknown objects. Admiral, moving at 0.8 light speed. They're using kinetic interception. They're sacrificing mass to stop our plasma. The human voice returned. Time's up, Admiral. You chose poorly. The display screen suddenly filled with contacts, hundreds. Then thousands of small vessels appearing from behind asteroids, from within planetary magnetic fields, from areas of space that should have been empty. Where did they all come from? Valshara demanded. They were hiding, Admiral, using the system's natural features to mask their signatures. Our sensors couldn't penetrate Jupiter's electromagnetic field or Venus's atmosphere. They've been here the whole time. 300 Imperial warships versus a few thousand small craft. Velsharos. Confidence returned. Concentrate fire. Show them the price of tricks. The fleet opened fire. Plasma cannons, missile batteries, and energy beams lanced out toward the human vessels. Some hits connected, destroying human ships in brief flashes of light. But for every human ship destroyed, 2 more appeared, and then the humans fired back the first kinetic. Rounds hit Velshar's forward ships before anyone realized they were under attack. Chunks of metal, some no larger than a human fist, traveling at significant fractions of light speed. Against the Empire's energy shields? They should have been useless. They punched through like the shields weren't even there. Shields are ineffective. Rendell shouted. The kinetics are too fast. The shields can't form quickly enough to stop solid matter at those velocities. Evasive. Maneuvers, Velshara ordered. Randomize our positions. Too late. The humans had already calculated trajectories. More kinetic rounds sleeted through the fleet. 7 ships died in the first salvo. Their hulls punctured by hypervelocity projectiles that released their kinetic energy in catastrophic explosions. Deploy countermeasures, Velshar commanded. Launch interceptor drones. The fleet tried to adapt, but the humans were always one step ahead. When the Empire used drones, the humans used electromagnetic pulses that fried their systems. When the Empire tried to retreat, the humans had already positioned ships to block escape vectors. When the Empire attempted to communicate between ships, the humans jammed their frequencies or, worse, hijacked them. Admiral, our computer systems are under attack, the ship's technical officer reported, her skin pale with fear. The humans are using some kind of invasive software. It's rewriting our navigation protocols. Impossible. Our systems are isolated from external networks. They're not using networks. Admiral, they're using our own communication beams as carriers. Every time we try to coordinate with the fleet, we give them another access point. Velshara watched in horror as 3 of her ships suddenly turned their weapons on their companions. The hijacked vessels fired on their former allies before their crews could regain control. By the time the affected ships were destroyed by their own fleet, the damage was done. Admiral, we've lost 93 ships, Rendell reported, his voice shaking. The humans have suffered approximately 400 casualties, but they still outnumber us 3-1. How is this possible? Velshara whispered. They're confined to one system. They don't have faster-than-light travel. How did they develop such weapons? The human voice answered, as if they'd been listening to her private thoughts. 847 years, Admiral. We knew you were out there. We knew you might come for us someday. So we asked ourselves one question. How do we survive against enemies with better technology? The answer, we don't fight fair. Another wave of kinetic strikes hit the fleet. Human ships darted in and out of engagement range, never staying in one place long enough for the Empire's slower-firing weapons to track them. Effectively, these tactics are insane. Velshara's weapons officer protested. They're sacrificing themselves at a 3-to-1 ratio, but they have the numbers to sustain it and we don't. Rendell observed grimly. Admiral, we need to retreat. The Empire does not retreat from primitives, Velshara snapped. Reform the fleet. Concentrate our shields. If we link our defensive systems, we can create a barrier they can't penetrate. The surviving ships began moving into a tight defensive formation. Their shields merged into a single powerful barrier. For a moment, it seemed to work. The human kinetic rounds bounced off the combined shields. Then the humans stopped firing kinetics. Admiral, new contacts. Much larger vessels approaching from Earth orbit. Finally, they're capital ships, Velshara said with grim satisfaction. Let them come. Our combined shields can withstand anything. The human vessels, each about the size of an Imperial destroyer, didn't fire conventional weapons. Instead, they released clouds of something that looked like metallic dust. "What is that?" Valshara demanded. The dust clouds drifted into the Empire's shield barrier and passed right through as if the shields didn't exist. "How?" Rendell started to ask. But then the dust reached the hulls of the Imperial ship's nanomachines. Billions of microscopic machines programmed with one purpose: disassemble. The outer hull of the nearest Imperial ship began to dissolve. Metal turned to powder. Systems failed. Hull breaches opened to vacuum. The crew never stood a chance. "Retreat!" Valshara finally screamed. "All ships, emergency jump to Mars orbit, now." The surviving ships, barely 200 of the original 300, engaged their faster-than-light drives and vanished. They reappeared near Mars, expecting safety. Instead, they found more human vessels. Waiting for them, the humans had known exactly where they would run. Valshara collapsed into her command chair, finally understanding the truth. The humans hadn't been isolated for 8 centuries because they were weak. They'd been isolated because they were terrifying. Grand Admiral Valshara sat in her command chair aboard the Eternal Victory, now orbiting Mars at a safe distance from both human forces and the red planet's surface. Her fleet had been reduced to 187 functional warships. "With dozens more damaged and limping, status report," she ordered. Her voice hollow. Rendell consulted his displays, his skin a sickly gray. "We've established a defensive perimeter around Mars. Human forces are not pressing the attack, but they have us surrounded. We count at least 8,000 small craft and an unknown number of larger vessels. Why aren't they finishing us off?" "Unknown, Admiral. Perhaps they're waiting for us to surrender." Valshara's pride burned at the thought. The Jothic Empire had never surrendered to anyone, let alone to a species that shouldn't even have space travel. She opened a secure channel to the Imperial homeworld, knowing the faster-than-light communication would take precious time to reach across the stars while she waited for the connection. Her science officer approached nervously. "Admiral, we've been analyzing the human weapons and tactics. I have some disturbing findings, more disturbing than what we've already seen." "Yes, Admiral. The humans are fighting with one hand tied behind their backs, metaphorically speaking. They're not using their most powerful weapons." "What do you mean?" "Their kinetic weapons are devastating, yes, but they're limited by physics. The nanomachine attack was terrifying, but it takes time to work." "Admiral, we've detected multiple human installations on Earth's moon. On Mars's moons, even in the asteroid belt, that appear to be particle accelerators or mass drivers, capable of launching projectiles at .-9-9 light speed. If they wanted us dead immediately, they could have used those. Then why haven't they?" The science officer's skin paled further. "Because they're not trying to kill us, Admiral. They're trying to make a point." Before Valshara could respond, her communication with the Imperial homeworld connected. Emperor Kaldros himself appeared on the display, his expression cold and impatient. "Admiral Valshara, explain why you have suffered such catastrophic losses to a primitive species." Valshara straightened despite her exhaustion. "My Emperor, the humans are not primitive. They possess weapons technology that rivals or exceeds our own. Their tactics are unconventional and highly effective. I request immediate reinforcements and authorization to withdraw. Withdraw." The Emperor's voice dripped with contempt. "The Jothic Empire does not flee from inferiors. You will hold your position. I am dispatching the Grand Fleet, 2,000 warships, including all 12 dreadnoughts. You will wait for their arrival and then crush these humans completely. Failure is not an option, Admiral. Failure is treason." The communication ended abruptly. Rendell looked at his commander with concern. "Admiral, The Grand Fleet will take 3 days to arrive. Can we hold out that long? We don't have a choice, Velshara replied grimly. Strengthen defensive positions. Rotate crews for rest. Prepare for a long wait. The 3 days that followed were torture. The humans didn't attack directly, but they made their presence known constantly. Small human ships would dart close to the Imperial perimeter, forcing the fleet to power weapons and shields. Drones would approach from unexpected angles, requiring constant vigilance. Sometimes, human vessels would simply broadcast messages in Jothic language messages that ranged from factual information about human history to dark humor about the Empire's situation. Why are they doing this? A junior officer asked after the 15th false alarm. Psychological warfare, Rendell explained. They're denying us rest, keeping us on edge, making us waste energy on shields and sensors. It's actually quite efficient. On the 3rd day, the Imperial Grand Fleet arrived. 2,000 fresh warships materialized at the edge of the system, led by 12 massive dreadnoughts, each one 5 kilometers long and bristling with enough firepower to sterilize a planet. Fleet Marshal Drakan, commander of the Grand Fleet, established communication with Velshara immediately. His skin bore the deep blue patterns of a career warrior, and his voice carried absolute confidence. Admiral Velshara, I am assuming overall command. Brief me on human capabilities. Velshara spent an hour explaining everything they'd learned. The kinetic weapons, the cyber warfare, the nanomachines, the tactical innovations. Draken listened impassively. I see, he said finally. You encountered an enemy that fights unconventionally, and you responded with conventional tactics. This is why you failed. I will not make the same mistake. Marshal, I urge caution. Caution is what got you trapped at Mars, Admiral. The Grand Fleet will demonstrate proper Imperial might. All ships, advance on Earth at maximum speed. Deploy all fighter wings. Prepare planet-cracking weapons. Marshal, wait, Velshara started. But Draken had already cut the communication. The Grand Fleet began its advance toward Earth, maintaining a tight formation that presented a wall of shields and weapons. It was an overwhelming display of military power, the kind that had conquered 47 star systems. The humans were waiting as the Grand Fleet passed Jupiter's orbit. The gas giant's powerful electromagnetic field suddenly intensified. Interference flooded Imperial sensors. Communication between ships became difficult. Coordination began to break down. It's a natural phenomenon, Drakan's science officer reported. Jupiter's magnetosphere is incredibly powerful. Then we'll push through it, Drakan ordered. But it wasn't natural. The humans had seeded Jupiter's magnetic field with devices that amplified and directed its energy. They turned an entire planet into a weapon while the Grand Fleet struggled with sensor interference. Human ships emerged from hiding spots throughout Jupiter's moon system. They'd been waiting in the shadows of Io, Europa Ganymede, and Callisto, places where volcanic activity and radiation made detection nearly impossible. The attack was coordinated and brutal. Human forces didn't engage the dreadnoughts directly. They targeted the fleet's support ships, its supply vessels, its communication relays. They cut the Grand Fleet into isolated groups that couldn't coordinate effectively. Reform the fleet, Drakan commanded. Protect the supply vessels. But the humans had studied Imperial doctrine for centuries. They knew exactly how the Empire would respond. When the warships moved to protect their support craft, the humans attacked the now exposed dreadnoughts with swarms of boarding craft. Boarding craft? Drakan laughed. Our dreadnoughts have shields that can withstand planetary bombardment. What do they think those small ships can accomplish? The answer came seconds later when the boarding craft attached themselves to the dreadnought hulls, not to breach them, but to deploy another weapon, localized electromagnetic pulse generators. The EMPs didn't penetrate the dreadnought's armor, But they didn't need to. They disrupted the ship's shield generators, their sensor arrays, their external weapon systems. The mighty dreadnoughts became blind, vulnerable, and unable to defend themselves effectively. Human kinetic weapons followed. Without shields, the dreadnoughts' thick armor was their only protection, and while that armor could withstand a lot, concentrated kinetic bombardment at 0.8 light speed eventually found weak points. The first dreadnought died 20 minutes into the engagement. Its main reactor breached by a kinetic round that found the perfect angle through its weapon ports. The explosion was visible from Mars. Impossible, Drakon whispered, watching his flagship sister ship die. That ship cost the resources of an entire star system to build. Marshal, we're reading massive energy signatures from the asteroid belt, his tactical officer reported. Thousands of them. They're charging weapons. The belt is full of asteroids, Drakon said dismissively. Empty space and rocks pose no threat. Marshal, those aren't rocks. Those are weapons platforms. The humans have fortified the entire asteroid belt. The asteroid belt had always been there, unchanged for billions of years, except for the past 847 years, during which humanity had quietly hollowed out thousands of asteroids, installed power generators, mounted railguns and missile batteries, and turned the belt into the largest defensive fortification in human history. When those platforms fired, the sheer volume of ordnance was overwhelming. The humans weren't aiming for precision. They were creating a wall of metal and explosives that filled space itself. The Grand Fleet tried to evade, but there was nowhere to go. They were caught between Jupiter's interference, the asteroid belt's bombardment, and the human fleet's tactical strikes. Retreat to Mars orbit. Drakon finally ordered. Emergency jump, all ships. The Grand Fleet scattered, ships jumping to faster-than-light speeds in every direction. Most headed for Mars, where Velshara's forces waited. But in their panic, many ships jumped to random coordinates. Desperate to escape, the humans didn't pursue. They'd made their point when the survivors regrouped at Mars. The damage assessment was devastating. Of 2,000 ships, only 812 remained functional. 4 dreadnoughts were destroyed. 3 more were severely damaged. And the fleet's morale was shattered. Velshal looked at Marshal Drakon's transmission with something close to pity. The proud warrior's skin had turned pale, his confidence replaced by fear. How? He asked simply. How did a single-system species develop such capabilities? Because they had 8 centuries to do nothing but prepare, Velshara replied. Admiral Velshara sat alone in her quarters aboard the Eternal Victory, staring at a datapad that glowed softly in the dim light. After 3 months of fighting, after losing 1,800 ships, after watching the supposedly invincible Grand Fleet shatter against human defenses, she had finally done what she should have done before the invasion began. She read the complete quarantine documentation. The Galactic Council had sent it to her personally after the Grand Fleet's arrival and subsequent defeat. The message had been brief. Perhaps now you'll read what you should have read before starting this war. The document began with a date, 847 years ago. Council survey ship Wandering Spirit had detected signs of industrial civilization in the Sol system. This was exciting. The Council always welcomed new species, and Sol's location in a relatively quiet spiral arm made it an ideal candidate for a friendly contact survey commander task. A methodical researcher from a peaceful species called the Venturi had approached the Sol system carefully. Council protocols required extensive observation before first contact. They would study the new species for at least 1 full cycle about to Earth, years before revealing themselves. The reports that followed chronicled humanity in the early 21st century. Species exhibits high intelligence and remarkable adaptability. They have developed nuclear technology, primitive computers, and have sent exploratory missions to their nearest celestial neighbor. Their population approaches 8 billion individuals, all confined to a single planetary body. Velshara scrolled further, finding Class S observations growing more detailed and more concerned. Day 47. We have observed human conflict patterns. Despite having achieved spaceflight and global communication, they remain divided into nearly 200 separate political entities. Warfare is constant, though currently limited to regional conflicts rather than global. Day 93. Studied human evolutionary history. This species evolved as persistence hunters on a high-gravity death world. Atmospheric oxygen levels are 21% dangerously high. Surface gravity is 0.98 standard higher than 70% of known civilizations. They have survived multiple mass extinction events including ice ages, volcanic winters, and pandemic diseases. Day 156. Discovered disturbing pattern in human domestication history. They took predators' wolves and bred them into companions. They saw dangerous animals and thought, I want that as a friend. This speaks to either remarkable courage or fundamental psychological differences from typical sapient species. Day 203. Analyzed human cultural development. Every major civilization, independently, developed organized warfare as a fundamental social institution. They have warrior classes, military academies, and strategic doctrines that span millennia. They don't just fight when necessary. They study fighting as an art form. Velshara felt her skin grow cold as she read. Class S reports painted a picture of a species utterly unlike anything the Galactic Council usually encountered. Most civilizations developed on paradise worlds. Gentle gravity, mild climates, abundant resources. They became sapient through cooperation, and social bonding. Humans became sapient through survival. The document continued. Day 367. Have compiled comparison data. Humans are physically weaker than many species, but compensate through endurance and pain tolerance. They can run for hours, survive in extreme temperatures, and recover from injuries that would kill most council species. Their death world origin has made them incredibly resilient. Day 412. Studied human technological development. They progressed from controlled fire to spaceflight in approximately 12,000 years. Their development is not linear. They experience periodic collapses and dark ages, then rebuild stronger. They treat failure as a learning opportunity rather than a final result. Day 500. Critical observation analyzed. Human response to adversity. When faced with scarcity, they innovate. When faced with predators, they develop weapons. When faced with disease, they develop medicine. Their baseline response to any threat is not avoidance, but adaptation and conquest of the threat itself. Then came the entry that changed everything. Day 547. Decision to attempt first contact. We have selected a group of human scientists working at an observatory in a region called Chile. They appear peaceful and will likely respond positively to evidence of extraterrestrial intelligence. Velshara read the next section with growing dread. Last ship had revealed itself to a team of human astronomers. The humans had reacted with shock, then excitement. They'd asked questions about council technology, about faster-than-light travel, about the number of species in the galaxy. Everything had seemed to be going well, and Tlask had shown them a holographic display of the Milky Way galaxy. With thousands of dots representing council member civilizations, the humans fell silent, Tlask had written. I thought perhaps the scale of galactic civilization had overwhelmed them. Then their leader, a female named Dr. Sarah Chun, asked a question that I will never forget. Velshara's breath caught. Sarah Chun, the same name as the human admiral who now commanded Earth's defense forces. Was it the same person? No, impossible. That would make her over 800 years old. Perhaps a descendant? Tlask's report continued. Dr. Chun asked, "How do we defend ourselves from you? Not, can we join you, or can you help us, or can we trade with you?" Her first question was about defense. When I assured her that the council came in peace, she asked, "But what if you didn't? What if someone else comes who doesn't come in peace? How do we protect Earth?" I attempted to explain that the council maintains peace, that warfare is rare among advanced civilizations. Chun listened politely, then said something I found deeply unsettling. Peace maintained through overwhelming force is just deferred violence. What happens when someone decides the force isn't overwhelming enough anymore? The other humans nodded in agreement. I realized then that these beings, fundamentally differently than council species, they don't assume good intentions. They don't trust in the natural tendency toward peace that most sapient species develop. They assume threat and prepare for conflict as a default state. Flask had returned to his ship deeply troubled. Over the next few days, he'd observed something remarkable and terrifying. News of the contact had spread across Earth. Instead of causing panic or celebration, it caused immediate militarization. The humans are unifying, Flask wrote. Political entities that were enemies yesterday are forming alliances today. Their military installations are going on high alert. They're accelerating weapons development programs. They're treating first contact not as an opportunity, but as a threat assessment. I monitored their communications. They're asking questions like, can we reverse engineer alien technology? And how long until they come back? And what are their weaknesses? They're not afraid of us. They're preparing to fight us if necessary. Flask's final report to the council was unambiguous. I recommend immediate quarantine of the Sol system. These beings are not ready for galactic contact, not because they're primitive, but because they're too dangerous. Their entire evolutionary history has programmed them to view existence as a struggle for survival. They will interpret any contact as a potential threat and respond accordingly. Furthermore, I believe that if we allow normal galactic traffic into their system, someone will eventually try to exploit them. Humans are physically weaker than many species and confined to one planet. They look vulnerable, but I have studied them for 2 years, and I am certain of this. Anyone who attacks humans will regret it. They are survivors, and survivors fight with a desperation that comfortable species cannot comprehend. The council had debated Flask's recommendation for months. Many delegates argued that quarantine was extreme, that humans deserved a chance to join galactic civilization. Others pointed out that humans hadn't actually done anything wrong. Being prepared for conflict wasn't the same as being aggressive finally. Council Speaker Meraden's predecessor had proposed a compromise. We quarantined the Sol system not to punish humanity, but to protect them and us. We protect them from exploitation while they develop. We protect the galaxy from the consequences of threatening a species that views threat as an existential challenge. Let them know we're out here. Let them know we're watching. Let them develop on their own terms. And pray to whatever powers guide the universe that when we finally lift the quarantine, they see us as friends rather than as the threat they've spent centuries preparing for. The vote had passed. Narrow-level Shah set down the datapad, her hands trembling. The quarantine had never been about human primitiveness. It had been about human nature. The council had tried to give humanity time to develop peaceful instincts, to become comfortable and complacent like every other spacefaring species. Instead, the quarantine had done the opposite. It had confirmed humanity's deepest fear. They were not alone, and they needed to be ready 847 years. 847 years of knowing they were being watched. 847 years of unified purpose. 847 years of asking one question. What happens when they come for us? Now Velshara knew the answer. They destroy you. A communication request flashed on her console. It was from Admiral Sarah Chun, whether descendant of the original Dr. Chun or perhaps kept. The Galactic Council chamber was packed with representatives from across known space. Every delegate who could attend had come in person. This was the most significant session in 847 years. Council Speaker Meriden stood at the central podium, her skin cycling through colors that reflected her complex emotions: hope, fear, regret, and anticipation. "We gather today to witness history," she announced. "The Sol System quarantine, established 847 years ago, will be officially lifted. Humanity will take its place among galactic civilizations." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Some delegates appeared excited, others nervous, and more than a few looked terrified. The chamber doors opened, and Admiral Sarah Chun walked in, accompanied by two other humans. They wore simple but elegant uniforms, dark blue with silver accents, and walked with the confident stride of people who knew exactly who they were and what they represented. Chun approached the podium next to Meriden. The human was significantly shorter than most species present, but somehow her presence filled the space. "Council Speaker Meriden," Chun said formally, "on behalf of the United Earth Government, I accept this invitation to join the Galactic Council. Humanity is honored to finally meet our neighbors face to face." Polite applause followed, though it was subdued. Everyone present knew what had happened to the Galactic Empire. Meriden gestured to the assembly. "Admiral Chun, before we proceed with formal membership protocols, many delegates have questions. Would you be willing to address them?" "Of course," Chun replied, an elderly delegate from the Venturi, the same species as Tlask. The original survey commander stood slowly. "Admiral, our survey team made first contact with your species 8 centuries ago. The commander's report stated that humans viewed first contact as a threat. Did we handle that situation incorrectly? Should we have approached differently?" Chun considered the question carefully. Commander Tlask did everything right. He was cautious, respectful, and honest. The problem wasn't his approach. The problem was our psychology. Humans evolved on a dangerous world where trust could mean death. When we learned we weren't alone in the universe, our first instinct was self-preservation. But why assume we were a threat? Another delegate asked. "The Council has maintained peace for millennia, because peace maintained by others is not peace you control," Chun replied. "Humans have a saying, hope for the best, prepare for the worst." Commander Tlask offered us hope, friendship, trade, knowledge. But we couldn't ignore the possibility of the worst invasion: exploitation, extinction. "So you spent 8 centuries preparing for war?" A third delegate said, unable to hide the accusation in their voice. "No," Chun corrected gently. "We spent 8 centuries preparing to survive. War was just one possibility. We also prepared for natural disasters, resource scarcity, pandemic diseases, and asteroid impacts. Survival isn't about pessimism, it's about responsibility." Meriden spoke up. "Admiral, the Galactic Empire violated the quarantine against explicit council warnings. Their aggression was not sanctioned by this body. Do you hold the council responsible for their actions?" "No," Chun said immediately. "The Empire made their own choices. They chose arrogance over wisdom, and they paid the price. The council actually did us a favor with the quarantine." This caused surprise throughout the chamber. "How so?" Meriden asked. "The quarantine gave us time," Chun explained. "Without it, humanity might have rushed into galactic society unprepared. We might have become dependent on alien technology, alien economics, alien protection. Instead, we developed independently. We built our own infrastructure, solved our own problems, and yes, we prepared our own defenses. When the Empire attacked, we didn't need anyone's help. Your preparation came at tremendous cost to the Empire," a delegate pointed out. 2,300 ships destroyed, thousands of lives lost, and ultimately, the collapse of an entire interstellar civilization. Do you feel any remorse?" The chamber fell silent, waiting for Chun's answer. Yes, she said quietly. Every life lost in that conflict weighs on us. We didn't want war. We wanted to be left alone. But when someone comes to your home with weapons and demands surrender, you have two choices: submit or fight. Submission means becoming slaves. Fighting means survival. We chose survival. The Empire's collapse has created chaos across dozens of star systems, another delegate said. Refugee crises, economic disruption, power vacuums the warlords are exploiting. Is humanity prepared to take responsibility for that? We didn't cause the Empire's collapse, Chun replied firmly. The Empire caused its own collapse through centuries of oppression and rule by fear. We simply exposed the truth. They could be defeated. If an empire collapses because its subjects learn it's not invincible, then that empire deserved to collapse. Strong words, Myrodin observed. True words, Chun countered. The Council quarantined us because you feared what we might become. You were right to fear, but wrong about why. You thought we might become conquerors. In reality, we became something more dangerous, unconquerable. A young delegate, barely an adult by his species. Standard stood nervously. Admiral Chun, my people are afraid of humanity. The footage from Sol System shows weapons and tactics that terrify us. How can we trust that you won't use that capability against peaceful civilizations? Chun's expression softened. She walked to the edge of the platform, closer to the delegates. What's your name? Keitho, the young delegate replied. Keitho, let me tell you something about humans, Chun said. Yes, we're good at fighting. We've had a lot of practice. But do you know what we're even better at? Building, creating, protecting those we care about. Humans didn't develop weapons technology because we love violence. We developed it because we love peace and will do anything to protect it. But your weapons are pointed outward. Chun interrupted gently. Toward threats. Toward anyone who would harm us or our friends. Keitho, in the past 8 centuries, do you know how many times humanity attacked anyone unprovoked? 0. The Empire came to us. We defended ourselves. That's the only kind of violence we're interested in. Keitho sat down slowly, though he still looked uncertain. An ambassador from a species that had suffered under Jothic occupation stood. Admiral, my people were conquered by the Empire 60 years ago. They exploited our resources, enslaved our population, and crushed any resistance. When your ships broadcast the Empire's defeat, uprisings began across occupied worlds. Within weeks, we were free. My people want to know, why did you help us? You owed us nothing, because we understand what it's like to fear conquest, Chun replied. We spent 847 years knowing someone might come for us. Your people lived that nightmare for real. Showing you that the Empire could be defeated wasn't charity, it was solidarity. Survivors help other survivors. The ambassador species didn't have tear ducts, but something in their expression suggested emotion. On behalf of the Toran people. On behalf of the Toran people. On behalf of the Toran people, I thank you. Chun nodded respectful honor and allowed several more questions before finally raising her arms for silence. Admiral Chun, the Council has one final question before we proceed. Humanity has demonstrated incredible military capability, advanced weapons, sophisticated tactics, and the will to use them effectively. If accepted into the Council, what are humanity's intentions? What role do you envision for yourselves in galactic civilization? Chun took a breath. This was the moment that would define humanity's relationship with the galaxy. Council members, she began, humanity doesn't want to be warriors. We don't want to be conquerors. We don't want to be feared. What we want is simple. We want to be partners. Partners? Myrodin asked. Yes, Chun continued. For 8 centuries, humans prepared for invasion. We built weapons, developed tactics, and created defenses. But we also did something else. We dreamed. We dreamed about the day when the quarantine would lift, when we could finally meet our neighbors as equals, when we could share our knowledge, our culture, our friendship. The Jothic Empire attacked us because they saw a weakness. They saw a single system species confined to their homeworld. They thought we were easy prey. They were wrong. But I don't want the galaxy to make the opposite mistake, assuming we're just weapons and warriors. Humans are scientists, artists, teachers, explorers, builders, and yes, when necessary, defenders. We offer the galaxy everything we are. Our medical technology that evolved from surviving death-world diseases. Our engineering that evolved from overcoming resource scarcity. Our determination that evolved from refusing to give up no matter the odds. In exchange, we ask for one thing: respect. Respect our boundaries. Respect our sovereignty. Respect our right to defend ourselves. Do that, and humanity will be the most loyal ally the Council has ever known. Threaten us, and humanity will be the most formidable enemy anyone has ever faced. The choice is yours. The chamber erupted in discussion. Delegates debating among themselves. Some arguing for embracing humanity, others cautioning against it finally. After an hour of debate, Mirrodin called for a vote. All in favor of accepting humanity as a full member of the Galactic Council? The vote was overwhelming. Only 3 delegates abstained, and none voted against. By the authority of this council, Mirrodin announced, humanity is hereby welcomed as a full-member civilization. The Sol System quarantine is officially lifted. Earth space is no longer